Alright, hello everybody, it's great to see you again, hope you're doing well. We're getting right back into my sleep paralysis demon. Is actually a pretty chill guy. So you already have a good idea as to what to expect from the story. Go ahead, sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, grab a snack, and enjoy. Dark clouds formed over the water as I stared at the white-capped waves. The clouds unleashed a heavy downpour, turning the horizon gray as rain fell from the sky over the ocean. Just as rain falls over the ocean, your soul can replenish itself by more than I could ever consume. Not even in 1,000 of your years does that make you feel better. On the beach in my mind's vision, I nodded. In my bedroom, he nodded back at me. Good. Now, as for your last question, why you cannot move, we are meeting at a point outside of your time where your world and mine touch. Your physical body cannot move here, but if you persist, you can learn to speak with me using your mind, and I will answer your questions in exchange for your drawings. You can draw pictures of whatever you like. I want to know more of your world. In my mind, I nodded again. This knowledge is a gift, so we can understand one another. I am not one who would hurt you. He pressed his fingertips to my eyelids again, closing them. In my mind's eye, I was still on the beach, but the sun was setting, and no stars were visible through the rain. I drifted back to sleep to the sound of falling rain. The next morning, I asked my parents for a sketchbook and some colored pencils. They tried to hold me off until Christmas, but since I spent most of my afternoons and weekends drawing pictures up in my room, Dad let me open one of my gifts a week early. A Strathmore sketchbook with 100 pages with 50 pack of Crayola-colored pencils. I started by drawing the rest of my family, my mom, my dad, and my little brother Tommy, and our little cat Libby. And even though he had died, our dog Pancakes. Next I drew our house and then our car. Then my school. I kept drawing anything I could think of, trees and birds and insects, until my sketchbook was full. I used my allowance to purchase more books so I could keep drawing. I honed my craft, redoing my earlier drawings in greater detail. My thoughts considered his wording. I am not one who'd consume an entire ocean. I wanted to ask him if there were those who could, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to know such things. Mr. Brown Sticklegs didn't return until my freshman year of high school. To him, it wasn't like any time had passed. I read up on lucid dreaming in the time between visits so that when he returned, I would be better capable of speaking to him. He held my book in his hands, flipping through my drawings, dotting over the increased refinement of my drawing skills. I had filled a dozen sketch pads and upgraded from Crayola to Prismacolor Premier pencils for my drawings. His biggest surprise was when after he complimented my drawings, I spoke to him. "Thank you," I said, seeing the words in my mind as I spoke them aloud. If he had a surprised expression, his eyes showed it. "You have been very busy, child," he said. "Do you have any questions you would like to ask?" I hesitated, but finally formed the words in my mind. Are there creatures who can consume an entire ocean? He didn't respond right away, which made me think I hadn't asked properly. As I asked him a second time, he put a finger to my lips as if to hush me. There are those who can. They are known as Dark Ones. They are capable of consuming entire souls, emptying them, leaving them dry and barren. You should not fear them, however, but you should also not provoke them. His eyes curved downward as if concerned or afraid. What do they look like? I asked. In my mind, my visions were filled with images of great and terrible creatures, spiders taller than the Empire State Building on thin, spindly legs of shadow and smoke. Tentacled monsters in the seas lofting blue whales like they were toys, ripping them to shreds with their curved, chitinous beaks. And great ghastly flying creatures that knock over orchards and forests with the beat of their leathery wings. I only showed you because you asked, Mr. Brown Sticklegs said. But it's best we don't talk or think about them. Let them be. I nodded in my mind. He leaned forward and pressed his plate-like face to my head as if to kiss me on the forehead, which was odd since he didn't have a mouth. Then, as usual, he closed my eyes and I drifted back to sleep. My life took a downturn during the latter years of high school. My dad unfortunately lost his job, and when the search for a new one dragged on, he turned to drinking to cope with his failure. He wasn't abusive, but he wasn't fun to be around either. In the months following, my parents would hush their arguing when I entered the room, greeting me with smiles as if nothing were wrong. That lasted until the day I came home from school to them fighting over a foreclosure notice from the bank. We moved out over a weekend from our home in the suburbs to an apartment on the other side of town. I internalized my feelings during that time. I withdrew from my friends and school activity, all besides the art club. The only one we could still afford. I saw my friends driving to school and hanging out while I rode the bus, too poor and too far out of the way to join in. My tastes began to change as well. Out was the bubblegum pop of Katy Perry, Kesha, and Taylor Swift. Instead, I listened to Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens, Bring Me the Horizon, and even more. My clothes and makeup became darker. More black t-shirts and skirts with black eyeliner and black fingernail polish. My mom called it my goth phase, not that she ever understood. My drawings became darker too. I moved from colored pencils to charcoal, drawing skulls in gothic-looking cemeteries as my passion for drawing animals and flowers waned. I also began to draw the dark ones, in great detail, exactly as I remembered them in my mind's eye. Mr. Brown Sticklegs visited me again a month after we moved into the apartment. He looked more at home in my room of black light posters and death metal bands than he did in my previous room. His eyes were dim, not the vibrant red they were before. He stared at me as I lay in bed, unable to move. He moved inches from my face as I heard his words in my mind. Your soul tastes different now. He didn't speak of my drawings. I worried that he might, especially since I'd been drawing the dark ones. Not only drawing them, but thinking about them and what type of damage they could do if they were to wake. He seemed sad for me. Although reading his expression was difficult with no face, he patted my head like before, but didn't close my eyes before leaving as he used to. My life continued its spiraling path like a bottle rocket with a broken stick. My parents didn't talk outside of short conversations about which bills to pay and which ones to ignore. Each night, Dad disappeared into a bottle while Mom disappeared online to chat with a male Facebook friend she knew from high school. The thing about rock bottom is that it's often disguised for a trapdoor that drops you to an even lower depth than you thought previously possible. The first bottom came when my father died. Drove off the road into a gravel pit late at night with an empty bottle of bourbon in the passenger seat. I cried, but it felt hollow. I felt hollow. Even when Mom tried to hold me, I didn't feel anything inside. I just didn't feel sadness, not even guilt, not anything. I disappeared into my sketchbooks, drawing even darker, more disturbing images. Death and dismemberment, Vividly accurate vivisections of cute animals I used to enjoy drawing. My friends didn't talk to me anymore, which was fine because I didn't want to talk to them anyway. I found people to hang out with. Not friends, but people who could get me access to moments of chemical-induced euphoria to forget about life for a while. And just like that, the trapdoor opened, dropping me to a new rock bottom of addiction. One thing, I had that in common with my dad. But instead of falling into a bottle, I fell into a needle. I stole money from my mom's purse to feed my habits, not that she noticed. She was too busy with her old Facebook friend who had moved from online acquaintance to nightly sleepover companion. When the time came to begin my senior year, I didn't even bother going back. I kept drawing, filling my entire sketchbook with dark images that reflected my bleak outlook on life. The dark ones were prevalent subjects during this period of my life. I drew them feasting on humanity, raking flesh from bone and their jagged teeth beyond lips of smoke. I came home one night to find my mom and her new male friend in the middle of a fight. It was different from her fights with Dad, more violent, more physical. When he raised his hand at me for trying to intervene, I decided it was time to bolt. I left home, hitching rides with anyone with a set of wheels I could manage to put up for short periods of time. My preference leaned toward those who had access to chemical release I craved. The more I could numb, the more I could escape. I found certain drug combinations had similar effects to sleep paralysis, where my mind's ability to control my body's actions became severed. In those moments of numb paralysis, I'd see Mr. Brown's stick legs watching me from afar as I dulled the pain. I saw what I perceived as the dark ones too. They weren't hiding in the shadows like Brown's stick legs did though. They were the shadows. Okay everybody, and that's about all the time that I have for this one today. This story's really ramping up and turning into something a bit intense. I think in the next one, regardless of length, we're going to go ahead and finish her off. I've been really enjoying this story. I hope anyone who's been listening to this has been enjoying it as well. Anyways, to those of you guys who've been watching through the entire thing, thank you very much. I'll see you all again very, very shortly. You all drive safe, and I'll catch you next time.